My name is Moira Kelly, and I'm the president of EXPLO. And today I'm here with one of the most delightful people I know, and that is Dick Light. And I got to know Dick because his children and grandchildren went to EXPLO, and actually one of your daughters taught at EXPLO before, of course, her career at MIT teaching there.
Yep.
And Dick and I chat fairly frequently, and we have fairly wide-ranging conversations. And I think that, to me anyway, those conversations are pretty thought-provoking and inspiring and sources of new ideas and ways to think. And I have just enjoyed those conversations so much and have found them so helpful that I thought it would be good to share your wisdom with others, Dick. So thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. And as a very happy father of two daughters, both of whom went to EXPLO, one of whom was a staff member at EXPLO, and now two grandchildren who just this past summer spent time, one in the upper, high school version, one in Wheaton in fifth grade. It's my privilege to join you.
Well, thank you so much. For those who don't know Dick, I'm going to give people your background, which really doesn't talk about how delightful a person you are, but does talk about your professional accomplishments. And Dick is the Carl Pforzheimer Professor of Teaching and Learning at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And he has been asked by 5 Harvard presidents to explore ways to improve the undergraduate experience, both at Harvard, and I think this piece is important, and for a diverse group of other quite different colleges. So what we're going to be talking about today is not just applicable to Harvard students, but really to a broad array of students. His book, Making the Most of College, Students Speak Their Minds, won the Stone Award and was one of the 3 best-selling books in the 100-year history of the Harvard University Press. And this last one doesn't surprise me at all. The Vanderbilt Chancellor's Lecture Series named him one of America's great teachers. So Dick, thank you for being here. And right now, it happens to be October. Who knows when people are going to be listening to this? But we're probably maybe a little bit more than a month into the school year. And some first-year students might be reveling at how wonderful college is. And then there are probably some that wonderful does not exactly describe the experience. And one of the things in your book that you did was you did a tremendous number of interviews and research. So all of the things that you're going to talk about today are not just kind of anecdotal pieces of information that you're passing along to others, but they're actually, the research has driven this. As a statistician, this is what you do. So in general, it's in reading your book, it looked like one of the key pieces was connecting the classroom experience to the out-of-class experience. And can you just talk about that a little bit?
I would love to. It's a great first question for you to ask. I want to, in 3 sentences or less, really just say something that you just said, but it's a big deal for the coming, for anyone who's going to be listening for the next little while. And that is, what you're not going to hear is Richard Light, me, my opinion, Dick Light's opinion. Of course I have opinions. You have opinions. I have opinions. Everyone has opinions. But what I want to share with anyone who's listening to this is really data. And you just sort of said that. This is data. It's not, one student once said to me 22 years ago, this is real data. Based, by the way, on over 2,500 student interviews at over 200 campuses. I go to one a month over 20 years. One a month is not that many for a day or two. And I interview students, but you add it up 12 months a year, 20 years, that's 240 campuses. So that's what I'm now going to talk about. All right. So to answer your first question, Moira, about remembering there's the inside of class, outside of class, a student taught me something, and I want to share it with everyone who's now listening, watching or listening. So how many hours, I invite every student and their parent to ask themselves a question. How many hours are there in the week? Most of us don't ask that question. Think about it. Well, let's see. 7 days, 24 hours a day. Do the simple multiplication, 7 days, 24 hours a day. That's 168 hours in a week. That's true for the whole world, everybody. Now, think of any college student. It's not Harvard, it's any college. It can be, University of Minnesota. Think of any random college or university. How many hours a week does the average student at almost any campus across America spend in sitting on their butt in the classroom?
Not many.
Well, think about it. They may take, say, roughly 4 courses, plus or minus 1. They may take 3 hours a week per class, maybe 4, maybe 2, but something in that range. So that they spend about 12, 13, 14 hours a week in the classroom. All right, simple arithmetic, 168 hours in a week, 12 or 13 or 14 sitting in the classroom. That means that they spend over 150 hours outside of the classroom. And on a residential campus, or meaning they live either on or in the residence halls, or just, in an apartment half a mile away from campus, that means 90% of their time is spent outside of class. So my first big idea to share, which many students have shared with me, is it's really important to think hard how you're going to spend all your time outside of class, not just how you're going to take Slavic studies because you like it. I'm all in favor of Slavic studies, but that's 3 hours a week. So that's my first point. Okay.
Well, one of the things that you write in your book is that students told you, or some students anyway, told you that things that worked for them in high school in terms of time management did not work for them in college.
Right. In fact,
what's that about?
Tell you exactly what it's about. I met with 7 colleagues from 7 different universities. I could start naming them, Brown University, and 6 at Harvard, Brown, and 6 others. By the way, 2 public, 6 private. I mean, they're just different. And they're not just in the Northeast, they're all around the country. So anyway, every campus did a simple set of interviews. And I'll try to say this very crisply and short. Imagine choosing 80, each campus chose 80 sophomores. They were starting their second year. 40 of them were specifically selected because they had a wonderful first year. They did well academically. They made friends. They were engaged. They were involved. To say it simply, total success. They were very happy. The other 40, of course, no one said this to them in these words, the other 40, the campuses were happy that these young men and women actually returned. Meaning they had a not so good first year. They didn't do well. They didn't connect. They weren't engaged. They did not make a lot of friends. And one of each campus had a few interviewers talk with their 80 students one-on-one, separately at different times in different rooms. I want to just tell you about one question to answer your question, Moira. One of the questions, I was one of the interviewers, and I'm simply looking at a young man, and I just said, think back 1 year. You're now starting your second year here at college. Think back a year to when you first arrived, a little nervous, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, all excited to be at college. How did you think about making the transition from high school to college? And let me just tell you, the answer to that question, the answers were sharply different for students who were happy in their first year versus those who were not happy or not successful. And I want to get right to the punchline without a big, introduction to it. There was one word, 4-letter word, totally clean, and it differentiated the happy students and the successful ones in their first year at college, as they described how they thought about it, making the transition from high school to college. That one word differentiated them from the students who did not have a happy experience. And I'll invite anyone who's listening, guess what the word is. I should add, it's the students who brought it up. The interviewers didn't bring this up. One student after another brought it up. And how about I simply, instead of just saying the answer, in fact, let me just say it. And then I want to give an example of a response from a happy student and a response from a not so happy student. The word that differentiates between the two groups is the happy students repeatedly on their own with no prompting brought up the 4-letter word time, T-I-M-E.
Yeah.
The unhappy, unsuccessful students they're not upset about it. They're not angry at anybody. It's just, they didn't bring it up. The word never came up.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, let me just quickly say, here's a typical response from someone who had a terrific first year at college. This is my short version. They would say something like, in answer to the, how did you think about making the transition? The student would say, oh, I remember exactly how I thought about it. Well, I figured I would have to work at college, probably academically harder than I've worked before. Plus, I wanted to make new friends. Plus, I'm a cross-country runner, and that's, I've got to practice every day. Plus, I'm a normal person. I want to hang around with my roommates and so on. And the conclusion always was, therefore, I quickly realized my most precious resource was my time. Other students use words like, my scarcest commodity is time. Third said, time management is clearly important. All right, that's from the successful students, and that's what they recalled thinking when they started college. Now, what about the unsuccessful, less happy students? Their typical response to the question, how'd you think about transitioning to college? Typically, they'd say, oh, I remember exactly how I thought about it. Well, I had always done pretty well in high school.
Yeah.
And so I just figured it's always worked. Don't change a thing. Just keep it rolling. I mean, they just didn't bring up time, and the word never came up. And so to conclude, I should add, I don't think that's a crazy answer. I could imagine myself, if I did well in high school and I'm accepted to a college and I'm happy, or at least I anticipate being happy, I could imagine saying, just keep it rolling. Things are pretty good. But those students, they're the ones who did not do well, which of course brings up what you mentioned, the word time management. That's the big takeaway from this exam.
Yeah, one of the things that was interesting to me, and I don't remember which chapter it was in, but that the notion that students did well in high school, and therefore that would lead to doing well in college. And I'm thinking about the academic piece, that some students did very well in high school academically, but they actually weren't particularly challenged. And one of the students in your book talked about how he was very good at testing and a number of other things. And what he was finding, he wasn't doing particularly well at Harvard, because one of the things, he needed to think more critically about things. And he was not able, at least initially, to apply concepts and the information and knowledge and actually apply those to new situations. And that was a whole new skill set for him to develop. And I just wonder, particularly for students who do well in high school, their identity is wrapped to some degree around, I'm a really good student, and now suddenly I'm not. But I think it's interesting that so much goes back to the time management piece.
It really does. I want to say one more word following up on what you just said, Moira. I want to say one more word about time management. When I speak, as I often do, to the parents of first-year students at Harvard, there's sort of a weekend in October, 1,000 or more parents come. Yeah. They're sitting in a big room called Sanders Theater, which seats over 1,000.
Know it well. Yep. Yeah.
I'm saying this with a smile. I'm kind of the entertainment for Saturday morning. I'm standing on the stage, making friendly suggestions to the parents. And I very much enjoy saying to them, to the parents of Harvard first-year students, I just say, you all know exactly what the words mean, time management. I know what the words mean. Your kids who are first-year students at Harvard College, they all know what the words mean. But you see, there's this small problem. Half of these students, they're not that good at it. They don't know how to do it. They all know what the words mean. Yeah. They know it's a good idea, but they don't quite know how to do it. And my favorite example, Moira, that I actually give, and people in the audience often laugh, I'll just say, the number of let's take a concrete example. A student comes to me, because I advise some first-year students. Student says, Professor Light, can you give me one example of good time management? And I just say, I'm going to make it really concrete. Do you have a class Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10? And the young woman who's a first-year student says, why, yes, my history class meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10. I say, excellent. do you have a class that meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10? The young woman says, actually, I don't. I'm free for that hour. How about Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11? Oh, yes, I have my economics class. So I stop her and I just say, so you have 9 to 10, you have one class. 11 to 12, you have another, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That means you know right now sitting here that you're going to be free. You've got free time between 10 and 11, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I say to this young woman, just look at her with a big smile, and I just say, how are you going to use that time? I'm not proposing that you study every minute, but the point just is give it a bit of thought.
Yeah.
And and then I remember one young woman asked me, well, Mr. Light, Professor Light, well, what should I avoid doing? And I just said, very simple. Don't just hang or chill or, any one of those other words. Never sort of kill an hour and say, well, I've got 9 to 10, 11 to 12. I'll just, hang around and sort of do nothing, kill the hour. And I said, that's a waste of time. If you're an athlete, go for a quick run. If you have 3 books to return to the library, get the job done. If you want to take one more look at your revised English essay, great. That's a great use of an hour. But I mean, you want to hang around with your boyfriend? Fine. But at least do something. Don't just chill or hang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, it's simple suggestions like that the students tend to appreciate.
I think that notion of time as a resource, time as a precious resource, and there's a limited amount of it. Yep. And you really do need to be thoughtful about how you use it. One of the things that I thought was really interesting too in your research was this balancing of academics and activities. So I've dealt with lots of kids and families who are like, get rid of the activity. That's very secondary. Like, I'm sending my child to college to study. I've talked to students who are like, I just need to really focus on my studies. And one of the things that I thought was so fascinating is that your research has shown that a substantial commitment to 1 or 2 activities, up to even 20 hours a week, yep, has little or no relationship to the grades that students get in their classes. What is that about?
I'm so glad you asked. What you said is a perfect summary of you've summarized it absolutely perfectly, correctly. And that is students who spend roughly speaking, up to about 20 hours a week outside of class doing whatever they love. And love is an important word.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Okay. Yep.
They have a much more, by the way, their grades are every bit as good, maybe even a hair better, ever so slightly better than students who sit. And I'm gonna use the example I got from a young man. I said to him, Joe, how do you study? He said, Mr. Light, Professor Light, how do I study? Well, I go to my room, I turn on the lamp. I look at my desk and I put my books on the desk. I apply the seat of my pants to the seat of the chair. And I open my book and I turn on my lamp and I hunch over the book. And he looked at me, how the heck do you think I study?
Yeah.
And I always remember thinking that that's good, but if that's all you do all day, and that's your whole college experience, I don't think you're going to enjoy it that much. So the goal is to try some outside of class activities that you really enjoy. If you're a drama person, do some drama, try out for a part in a play, be a techie, just do something connected to it. If you are a singer, join the chorus, join an a cappella group. There are a million of them at many colleges. If you enjoy art, there are 16 different, dance groups, performance groups, just artist groups. Are you a mountain climber? Great, go to the mountain climbing club. Are you a young Democrat or a young Republican? Great, join the club. But don't just sit on your rear end in your chair in your room, hunched over your books day and night. And I'd like to hope that parents will agree with what I'm saying.
Well, excuse me. One of the things that I thought was quite interesting was that so many students talked about these out of classroom experiences as deepening in many ways their intellectual pursuits and helping them actually understand what they, as you say, like they found something that they got lit up about. Yep. And they also were able to tie this back to their studies And it oftentimes leads them to whatever particular graduate school or profession or something else that they likely would not have landed upon if they hadn't been participating this much in things outside of class.
Yeah. I actually have an example of what you just said, Moira, about how making connections between what goes on inside the classroom and what really kind of turns you on, what appeals to you as a student at college, outside of the classroom, can really help shape the way you think about everything. And I have a short, simple, and absolutely true example. There was a young ballet dancer who came to my campus, who came to Harvard, a young woman. She was apparently a world-class ballerina. I mean, you know, I'm not the best judge, but the point just is she was supposedly fabulous. And halfway through her first year, she injured her shin or some part of her leg. You know, it wasn't a disaster, but she could not dance. And so she went to her advisor. I was not her advisor, but she told me the story. She went to her advisor, her academic advisor, and said, boy, I'm really stuck. I care so deeply about dancing. It's what I love outside of class, and I can't do it. And the advisor said, well, while you're unable to dance, have you thought about choosing a class which will help you understand shin splints? Because it's crippling you. I mean, you're miserable about it. And the woman said, this is before spring semester of her first year. So, you know, kind of time to choose classes for January, February, and for the spring. And so this young woman decided she would sign up for a class in the human body bone structure, which certainly makes sense given her shin splints.
Sure, yeah.
As part of that, she told the instructor, the professor in that class, the truth, the absolute truth, that she had shin splints and it was just driving her nuts that she couldn't dance. To which the professor said, you know what? You really want to learn about shin splints? Why don't you do some experiments with chicken bones? And, you know, you'll learn about the body and the legs of chickens. And the girl, this young woman, said to herself, gee, that sounds, it never occurred to me, but my professor is suggesting it. Sure, I'll be his research assistant. And she did. Then the following semester, in her sophomore year, she signed up for a course on turkey bones. And I'm not joking. The semester after that, she said, this is good. I'm learning so much about, you know, orthopedics. So then she began learning how to do surgery. Simple. You know, she's a sophomore, 19 years old. Surgery on turkey bones. Let me tell you what she told me when she was a senior on the verge of graduating. I said, what are you going to do next in your life? You know, Susan. And she said, Professor Light, I've been accepted to Johns Hopkins Medical School, and I'm going there. And I know why I'm going to medical school. Most of my friends, all they know, they mumble something vague about wanting to be a doctor. I know exactly why I'm going to medical school. I want to do orthopedics. I've now studied it for 4 years, and it affected my life personally. End of story. But there's an example about how being a ballerina and then having it, in her case, sort of screwed up a bit because she couldn't dance for a while. And then, you know, she began dancing again. But the end of the story just is, look at how combining what you do outside of the class with something you care about and also inside the class, it's an incredible winner.
Well, Dick, that makes me think about, you know, paths and, you know, that oftentimes when you're going to college, you've got some folks who go, I'm going to do this, I'm going to major in this, then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, even though their experience in the world might be fairly limited.
Yep.
And, but I can imagine some parents, potentially, if you were to go home at some point or get on the phone to say like, oh, I'm taking a class where I'm looking at chicken bones, right? Or I think I'm going to do some surgery on turkey bones. I can imagine potentially some parents going like, I'm not sure where this is going to get you, you know, and what I think is interesting, it sounds a little bit like what you're talking about is through these explorations of whatever it is, there are emerging interests and you start connecting dots in ways that if you're not doing the exploration, it's hard to figure out what your interests are and connect those with an academic piece and what your strengths are. And that is you want to be cognizant and thoughtful about your time to use it wisely, but you don't exactly know necessarily where it's going to come out.
Yep. As usual, you make such a good point, and let me actually comment on that, because I've created 2 words that capture the spirit of what you just said. At least I've tried. And
Okay.
that is, how about I just say, the happiest students. I interview a lot of graduating seniors, not just at Harvard where I work. I go to work there every day, but at the 200 and some other campuses, some of them very famous. There are some campuses hardly anybody's heard of, and a whole lot in the middle, large, small, public, private. Anyway, when I ask graduating seniors, go to some campus, University of Michigan, pick it out of a hat. And I sat there for a day, and I met one-on-one with 20 graduating seniors, just 15, 20 minutes each. And I said, can I just ask you a few simple questions about your experience here at this university? They said, sure, happy to talk. And I just said, describe your overall happiness. And then, they said whatever they said. Are you satisfied with both the academic, the non-academic part? They said what they said, and so on. Anyway, and then I asked, more things like, what's their major? But here's the takeaway. The happiest students, the most satisfied students before they graduate, my favorite question was, if you had a younger sibling or a cousin or your closest friend who was thinking of coming here, what's the one best bit of advice you'd give them about how to make the most of this college experience for approximately 4 years? The happiest students tended, not all of them, but most of them, they gave an answer. I'm going to put it in my own words now, not their words, but my words. They just said, getting the balance right between investing and harvesting is the single most important ingredient of creating a happy college experience. Now, what does invest? I just made those words up, capture an idea. Investing means trying new things.
Okay.
Harvesting, think of what is harvest. Harvesting is, you plant in the, whatever it is, you plant in the spring and you reap the harvest in the fall. So a good example of investing is the student who comes to Rutgers and, pick it out of a hat, or Bates College, whatever it may be, Bowdoin College, and simply says, I was the editor of my high school newspaper and I was really quite good at it. But I think I'm ready to try something new, so I'm going to try out for an a cappella singing group, even though I've never done that before. That's investing, because when you invest, you take a risk. You may not be that good at it. You've never done it before. It's not guaranteed that you'll enjoy it, although you think you might. But anyway, it's taking a risk, try something new. Harvesting, in contrast, is the cross-country runner in high school who's darn good at it, very good at it, and knows it, he or she. And they go to college and they say, look, I have a big investment. I know I'm good at it. I'm going to just keep running. I enjoy it. It's harvesting. They're building on their strengths. One young woman said to me, when I said, I'm curious why you chose to continue doing it, the woman looked at me and in a wonderful choice of words, she said, it's who I am. And I thought to myself, it's like, you own that. That's you've worked hard for years to get good at it. And you are good at it. So of course it's who you are. Good for you. You should try to continue something you're good at, but maybe try one new thing. So the point just is getting that balance in good order.
I like that a lot. Yeah, I like that. I like that, the investing and the harvesting a lot. I want to move on to another subject. So you certainly, there are, you talk about in your book, getting help when it's needed.
Right.
So one obvious, you're doing poorly, right? Academic, you're great.
You're getting a C+ in calculus or whatever the heck it may be.
You know that you're in trouble and something's going on. But what I thought was interesting as a red flag was students feeling a sense of isolation from the rest of the community. That in and of itself was something to be concerned about. Yep.
Well, let me, I have a couple of thoughts about that. First, what you're saying is just factually correct. Some fraction, that it varies, by the way, a lot campus to campus. As anyone can guess. There are some campuses that have relatively few students who feel very, very much isolated. Other campuses, and they tend, frankly, to be the larger, whether it's public or private, I won't mention any name, it's inappropriate, but, think of a gigantic university. It's easy to get lost in the crowd. So can I just say, this is about the importance of good advising and finding when you go to college. If I were talking to any student right now, or their parent or parents, I would just say the single most underappreciated feature of a good college experience is getting good advising. And let me give a couple of quick examples of what a good advisor can say to a student. Example one, choose at least one small class every semester. You don't have, if you're taking 4 courses, they don't all have to be small. You go to any college, introductory biology, introductory political science, introductory economics, there are going to be 200 people sitting in the room, even at a good small liberal arts college. So, that's not a small class, but surely even at a big university, I'll speak for Harvard, it's 7,000 students, 3/4 of the classes enroll fewer than 20 students. I define small as fewer than 20. Why? Because a student will be forced to talk. If the instructor's any good, they'll be forced to talk. Second, I would advise the student, even if you're hesitant and shy, make the effort, push yourself, screw up your courage, try to contribute to class. And above all, don't take all your classes where you're sitting in a big auditorium in row 39, hiding behind a pole so no one can see you. And you're sitting, taking notes, scribbling every word the instructor's saying, and you're saying to yourself, oh, this is wonderful, I'm learning so much. How to be isolated, that's the definition of how to be isolated. Take one small class. I will tell you, how about I even, I actually will quote one of my own daughters now, I won't say which of the two, who took a class in what I thought was a slightly unusual subject, but that's not the point. There were 12 students enrolled. And when I said, why'd you choose that class? Because it was unusual. Her answer to me was, well, Dad, I figured even if I don't like half the class, I'll still have 5 or 6 other friends. Plus, I'll get to know the instructor, and the instructor will get to know me. And how can that be bad? And so she took it. And the end of the story is the instructor in that class ended up being her thesis supervisor at her request, because the instructor got to know her, she got to know the instructor, they appreciated one another, it was cordial. And so my daughter went back and said, would you be willing to supervise my thesis? He said, I'd be absolutely delighted. I know you, you're serious, you're competent, I'd be happy to do it. Everyone won. And what's the extra effort involved? Just choose a small class and speak up, that's all.
Well, so that's one piece, choose a small class. And as someone who went to a small liberal arts college, that's basically all I took. So I'm a huge, fan of that. And because I've seen it certainly work in my life and other people's lives. The other piece, though, is that I think I've run into them, certainly in college students that I've worked with, that there are students who just have a hard time self-advocating, or feel some level of shame going to an advisor to say, I'm not doing well. And interestingly enough, for some students that I've worked with, said, I don't think the professor would be interested. And of course, my response is, absolutely, they'll be interested, I mean, they're there to help you. This notion of self-advocacy and having a belief that the faculty is there to help you. Is there anything you can say about that?
Yes. I'm going to be very specific. Every year, I have 4 first-year advisees at my college, at Harvard College. I should add, the president of Harvard College volunteers. I volunteer. I'm not paid to do this. It's just, a friendly service to my college community. I'll advise 4 first-year students. So I volunteer. The dean of admissions, he volunteers to supervise 4 first-year students. The dean of students' office, she, a middle-aged woman, volunteers to advise 4 first-year students. The president of Harvard University volunteers to advise first-year students. That means sit with them one-on-one every, meet once a month. How's it going, Harry? How's it going, Sally? So what I want to just say is, when I meet with each of my first-year advisees, it's typically, the year's just beginning. Classes haven't even started. It's like August 28th. The students moved in yesterday. They're still figuring out where the bathrooms are. Anyway, they come to see me one at a time individually, and I'm sitting with young, I'll just use the name Sally, pick a name. And I'll just say, after, Sally, tell me about your background. What do you think you might be interested in? Do you have any questions you think I could answer? After 15 minutes of genuine pleasantries, I'll just say, Sally, I have one bit of advice for you if you are interested. And of course, the students all say, yes, of course, I'm very interested. And I just say to them, if you don't remember a single thing that we said to one another for the last 15 minutes, I hope you will remember what I'm now going to say to you for the next 15 seconds. And I just turned to her and I said, I have a question for you, Sally. What's your job this semester? And these wonderful young folks, they're 18, 19 years old. They stare at me and they think for a minute, oh, I see what you're getting at, Professor Light. My job is to study hard and do well. And I'm thinking, yes, of course, that's not what I had in mind, but, say, excellent. That's an excellent answer. Yes, your job, you should study hard, and I hope you do very well, but I don't quit. And I'll just say, what's your real job? And then they're a little taken aback, and they think for a moment, and a lot of them say, oh, yes, now I see what you're getting at. My real job is to engage fully with the many exciting opportunities at this university. And when I'm smiling, and you're smiling, because it's right off the admissions application.
Sure, yeah.
Anyway, and I say, I don't want to ever make fun. So I say to the students, excellent, you should engage fully, but I won't quit. By the way, I'm doing this at students' urging. This is what happens when I interview all the students. And I said, what do you think we should tell incoming students? And they said, tell them what I'm now telling you. So then I say, so Sally, that's good, but what's your real job? And, I refuse to quit. Finally, everybody throws up their hands and they say, I don't get it. What are you asking me? And I say, Sally, your real job is to make an effort, reach out, screw up your courage, be proactive, get to know just one faculty member this semester, and indeed every semester, and have that faculty member get to know you, who you are, why you're here, what you're interested in, at least a little bit. And then I say, just think, Sally, even if you fail, if you do not succeed half the time, by the time you're a senior, if you make this effort, you'll have 3 or 4 professors. They know who you are. They know a little about you. They know why you're here at college. They care a little bit, I hope, care a little bit about you. They can serve as job references. They can write letters for graduate school, for a fellowship. I mean, whatever you wish. But most of all, it'll connect you with some faculty members, and that is really making the most of college. And I want to just imitate the typical response of a brand new first-year student sitting in my office. A typical response to that, when I say, your job is to get to know a faculty member, a typical first year will say, ooh, that's it. That's my whole imitation of a first-year student. And the point just is, it's so obvious when I say it. And the students all say, I guess that's sort of obvious, that's my job. But a lot of them might not think about it.
Well, I think it's obvious when you're later in your college career. I mean, it's obvious to us, but as someone who's 18 years old, just showing up at college, of all of the things, I think, the responses that they gave you, I should do all my classes, I should engage. There are lots of things that can appear to be the most important thing to do. And I don't know that one is so obvious for folks until you say it, and then it becomes, oh, yes. But that's a piece of advice that many students never get. And And they don't wake up to that until their senior year sometimes.
Which Moira, of course, you're exactly right. And which, as I just listening to what you're saying about some students don't figure that out until late in their college, their several college years, all the more reason to have a good advisor who simply makes the point. Or if they're listening to this conversation, they just got, they just heard the point. So, wherever they go to college, large, small, East, West, Midwest, whatever it is. Let me also say one other thing. A good advisor will remind students, because some students went to really good high schools where they sort of know how to connect with a teacher, with a faculty member.
Yeah.
Others went to gigantic high schools. They could be urban, they could be rural. I mean, they're all different backgrounds, but they never had the opportunity to really learn how to connect. So I actually can make a couple of suggestions, very quick.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah.
Concrete suggestions to somebody who may be right now starting college or maybe a senior or junior in high school and is thinking ahead. The first idea is you can't imagine, I think anybody who's listening to this may be surprised, the number of students who come by my office at Harvard. And this is true of all my faculty, colleagues, and friends. So I'm speaking for a large number of people now. Student pokes their nose in my office. It's like 10 minutes of 4 on a random Tuesday. And they say, Professor Light, do you have some time to talk? So they're actually doing what I urge, which is get to know a faculty member. But the honest truth is, I'm looking at my watch thinking, gee, it's 9 minutes to 4. I teach a class at 4. Oh. So I can't talk to you now. And I say to the student very nicely, well, now's not a good time. I mean, I'm getting ready to teach a class. I can't sit and talk. I'm totally absorbed with, getting ready for the class. But I usually say, I'll be happy to make an appointment. So here's the takeaway. Any good advisor, and if you don't have a good advisor, so listen to me right now if you'd like, and that is make an appointment. It's not exactly hard on Tuesday to say to the faculty member, do you have 20 minutes available to talk? Maybe Wednesday or Thursday in the next day or two. Almost all faculty members will, within reason, will find time, right? Second bit of advice connected to that. This is the biggie. Do your homework. Imagine how I'm talking to the student now. Imagine how I, as a faculty member, I mean, I consider myself, someone reasonably serious. A student comes in and says, Professor Light, it's, they made an appointment. That's good first step. They show up on time. Excellent. Now we're sitting and I say, well, how can I help you? What brings you here? Friendly. And they say, well, I know you teach courses in education. Could you tell me about your work? And my shoulders, honestly, I don't ever show this to the student.
Sure, yeah.
But the secret truth is, and I hope anyone listening to this, it's sort of obvious, my shoulders slump and I think to myself, oh no, this student has made zero effort to learn. What do I do? What am I interested in? What do I teach? What do I care about? What projects am I doing? And then let me draw the contrast, which is the student who comes in and says, Professor Light, I Googled you. It took kind of like 3 minutes. I see one of your current projects is helping students who are first generation in their family going to college to succeed at college. That's a topic I'm really interested in. Could you just tell me briefly what you're doing? Well, I'd love to do it. The student's asking me about my work. Who doesn't like to talk about what they do? So my point is that student's 3 minutes Googling me wins him my lifetime admiration, or her, my lifetime admiration. Whereas the student who just hasn't thought about doing their homework, the truth is it's a bit lazy. So, I mean, that's not a wonderful way to say it, but you know what I mean.
I think that oftentimes people don't realize that mentoring is a two-way street. And I've done a number of workshops with folks where I would ask them, have you ever had a mentor or feel that you've had a mentor? And there would be people who would say no. And their perspective on it was, I just never ran into someone who was appropriate or interested or whatever else. And then we had to talk about that there's actually a dialogue that happens. To be mentored means that you're getting something out of this relationship, and the person mentoring you is getting something out of the relationship. And then getting something may simply be that someone's showing some interest in your work, and is committed to making the relationship happen. So that's actually really, that's really helpful.
Hey, Moira, want an example of mentoring?
Sure.
Okay, this is a vivid example because I can hold up a document. Each year, I am assigned a group of students who they are my advisees, and I treat them the way I think a reasonably good mentor should treat students. I actually give the students my first draft of whatever next thing I'm writing. And it's not a lot. It could be, 8 pages, double spaced. It's not that heavy a lift. And I'll say to the students, I just am writing my next article, and it's, in my field, and you were assigned to me as an advisee because our interests overlap. If you have the time and the interest, and you would like to maybe mark it up and talk about, what I am giving you, my first draft, maybe make even 1 or 2 friendly suggestions for how I could improve it. You play the role of professor. I'll be your student. Come up with good suggestions. I think we'll both have a good time, and I'll benefit from your reactions, right? I did that with all 8 of my advisees. A few of them ignored me. A few of them did it, and it was, pretty good. One of them, her name is Allison Jegla. And I'm holding up a book.
Yes, sure.
Allison Jegla is my co-author. She's a first-generation college student who grew up in Michigan in a tiny little town, population 2,800, went to an under-resourced high school, and she shows up as my advisee. And she took what I gave her, the 8 pages, she gave it back to me 4 days later. She made everything better. And I was thinking, this is unbelievable. And she said, Professor Light, I really enjoyed this. Can we talk about it? I must have spent an hour and a half talking to her one-on-one. She was happy. I was happy. My paper got better. She said, do you have any other things you want me to mark up? I said, why, yes, I actually do have another thing. Anyway, when this happened 3 or 4 straight times, I said, Allison, would you like to be my co-author, my junior author?
Oh my gosh.
She looked like she was going to faint.
Well, of course. My gosh, right.
And it made the book that I wrote, with her as my second author, my co-author, full co-author, right on the cover of the book. I'm very proud of it. And she made it a lot better. And she contributed many of her own ideas. So there we are. That's a real example of mentoring.
Dick, you reminded me of something that happened to me when I was in law school. I used to be an English teacher, and I edited an article by Archibald Cox. And I just did it like I was editing any paper. Yeah. And I realized by the end, it was all marked up. And then I was thinking, who am I to tell this fellow anything, And oh my goodness, so gracious. But I think there is magic in these relationships, but it takes some sense of vulnerability to step out and participate in them. But if students are willing to do that, there really are just incredible things that come of them. Our time is coming to a close here. And what I just wanted to ask you, Dick, is, one of the things I'm sure you talk to parents about, I talk to parents about on a regular basis, is you want students to become self-advocates, you advise against helicopter parenting, et cetera. And I think most parents understand this. But if you have a child at college that is struggling, and you don't want to do things for them, from a distance, what is it that you can do for them, or how to be supportive?
I think what I'm now going to say takes a little bit of courage on the part of a parent, but as a loving parent and now parent myself, this is my honest best advice. It's that parent who kind of knows that their child or grandchild, whoever it is struggling a little bit, but not seeking help or assistance. The parent could easily get in touch with the Dean of Students office or the Dean of First-Year Students or whatever the right title, and simply tell them the truth. My daughter's always been a fabulous student through high school, That's probably why they were admitted to, your excellent college. But I have the sense that in 2 of her 5 classes, she's sort of struggling and she's hesitant to ask for help. If there's anything, you can look into it or do, I would be so grateful. And I think that's an example. Most colleges will try to be responsive, especially the smaller ones. Again, I don't want to pick on Ohio State. I'm only choosing Ohio State because they have 50,000 undergraduates.
Oh, gosh.
It's hard for them to be responsive. And, I can't be angry at them. They have 50,000 students. It's not reasonable to expect it. But, if you went to a small liberal arts college, enrollment 2,000, whatever it is, I'm guessing that, anyone who's at that small college enrollment 2,000 right now, if their parent shared with the dean of students or whoever the right person is, my son, my daughter is a little bit struggling. They're talented, but they're unsure. Maybe are they taking too many advanced courses the minute they set foot on campus? I think that's a good idea. Moira, do we have time for one more bit of advice?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's just that I wanted to sort of tuck this in because this seems to be one of my most popular bits of advice that I give to students. They come back a year later and said, best bit of advice I got. So I just wanted to share it with anyone who's listening. It's very simple. Suppose a student wants to take a course in any subject. It could be sociology, could be psychology, could be history, could be anything. And suppose they say, I see 2 history courses that look good. One of them has a 20-page final paper due at the end of the semester. The other has 7 3-page papers due every week or 2. So in other words, 7 short papers versus 1 long final paper. I simply want to say, I'll pose this as a question to someone who might be listening. Which would you choose? Assuming good instructors, assuming interesting topic. And let me just give my strongly preferred response. Students say best advice they got. The advice I would give is this: always choose classes that allow you to make mid-course corrections, mid-course adjustments, meaning choose the course that asks for 7 3-page papers. Why? Because suppose you hand in your first paper and you get it back next week, C+. You write very well, and I see you've convinced me you did the homework. You read chapter 2 in the textbook, which was my assignment. But that wasn't what I asked for in this paper. I wanted to know your analysis. I didn't want you to convey to me that you did your homework. I'm sure you did your homework. I don't doubt it. But what's your analysis of what you read? In future papers, please present your analysis. Don't just convey to me you did your homework. I'm sure you did your homework. That's what you did in high school. Now you're in college. Anyway, the student has 6 chances to move the C+ to an A- or an A. Whereas suppose there was the one final paper, 20 pages, they hand it in, and a week later they get their paper back from the professor, C+. Well, this is a very good paper, but it's not the assignment. All you did is convey to me that you did the homework. Too late, course is over. Final grade is C+, can't fix it, can't adjust anything. In other words, you can't make any mid-course corrections. So the more chance you have to make adjustments as the class goes along, the more you can truly learn and frankly do better.
That's great advice, Dick. And thank you for all of this advice for folks. It's just been wonderful. And I want to thank our listeners. And I recommend that you take a look at Dick's book, because you can get into more of this. And because it's really fascinating. And also, I had a conversation with Richard Detweiler, who recently published, I think this spring, The Evidence of Liberal Arts Needs, Lives of Consequence, Inquiry, and Accomplishment, that was published by the MIT Press. And what's interesting is some of the overlap with what you're talking about, small classes and connecting with people. And so I think that's a wonderful book, as well as your book, for parents of high school kids to read, actually high school students, and people at colleges and universities thinking about programming and supporting students once they get there. So Dick, Thank you so much. I know we're going to chat again.
Absolutely. We'll talk again soon. Moira, this has been a pleasure for me. I will say this, I made a whole bunch of suggestions. If anyone who's heard this finds even just 2 or 3 of the 7 or 8 suggestions I made, if they like 2 or 3, that's a big win.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
I mean, what a great investment of an hour. You came away with 3 new ideas, even if you don't like the other 5.
Absolutely, absolutely. So because all of this has been so practical. So good. Thank you so much, Dick. And I know that we'll chat soon. And I just want to thank folks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Moira, this has been my pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care.
Good. Bye-bye.